Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Values of Ashura. Joining us today in our studio we have Sheikh Afzal Mirali. Welcome back to the show. For today we will discuss the value of patience as a value which Imam Hussein alayhi salam revived on the plains of Karbala on the day of Ashura. So how would you introduce patience as a value of Ashura?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-khalq Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin wa ala sahbihim al-akhyar al-muntajabin wa ala jami' al-anbiya'i wal-mursalin wa la'natu da'imatu ala a'da'ihim ajma'in ila qiyam yawm ad-din. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alayka wa ala al-arwah allati hallat bi fina'ik. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much for this honor. We continue again with the different values of the 10 values that we mentioned before, which we were going to be talking about. Now we come to the value of patience, as-sabr. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَبَشِّرَ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. صدق الله العلي العظيم. He says, and give good news or glad tidings to the patient who when a calamity befalls them, say, surely we are from Allah and to Him we shall surely return. During a time when the Ummah had forgotten most of the Islamic principles and values, or rather the truth of these values, and had taken other values in their places. We had, for example, patience. Patience were forgotten, and intidhar or idleness was taken in its place, just plain waiting. These were distorted understandings of these principles, and of course of the principle of sabr. This was an Umayyad's understanding of these values of Islam. These were taught to the people starting from the time of Muawiyah. And as a result, the people of that time, especially in the areas which were under the control of the Umayyad state at that time, they only knew that Islam which they were taught by these authorities. And as a result, if I were to go further a little bit back, when Imam Ali alayhi salam was martyred, was struck with the sword in the mihrab in Masjid al-Kufa, and people thereafter came to know that Imam Ali was martyred in the mosque, was struck with the sword in the mosque, they started to ask, because they knew what only Muawiyah had told them about Imam Ali, that he was a fasiq, he was a corrupt person, he wouldn't pray, etc. He didn't used to pray. And so they started to exclaim, did Ali used to pray? As a result, this same value had also become distorted, and we will mention later on how. So this value, the tree of this value was irrigated, was watered with the blood of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his companions, and thus patience, again, among the other values, can be considered as a Husseini, Karbala'i, Ashura'i value as well.
So as a value of Ashura, the importance of patience cannot be overstated. However, what do the Quran and the Hadith have to say about it?
Of course, with regards to the Quran, there are many sayings in the Quran, there are many verses in the Quran related to patience. And I was just, first of all, refer to this first verse that I quoted in the beginning. That's, and give glad tidings to those who, if they are befell by a calamity, they say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This verse shows us what these patient people do during the time of calamities. I will later mention how many times or types of sabr are there. There are many types according to the thing that the person is doing sabr for. But when there is a sabr of a calamity, for example, I have a huge loss in wealth due to some transaction, for example, due to some trade situation, I lost a lot of money. During this situation, the Quran calls us that there is a special secret recipe, a special dhikr to be mentioned, which is Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. In one of the previous episodes, I mentioned that the circle of life starts with Allah. It comes to al-Barzakh al-Nuzuli. I ended at that time, and I wanted to complete what I forgot, that when we had reached the station of dunya, When a person in the dunya is faced by a calamity, he should do this dhikr in order to remind himself where we are from and that this dunya is only a temporary abode. After this dunya, we have al-barzakh al-su'udi and al-qaws al-su'udi, which is the rising, which is the rising crescent, let's say. So over here we have al-barzakh al-su'udi. In this barzakh we have the same characteristics that we know, that we learn in madrasa, etc. We have a special kind of subtle body over there which does not have the characteristics or all the restrictions of this material world, yet at the same time it does not have all of the benefits or all of the capacities of the hereafter, of the akhirah, of the Jannah. After that we come to the Jannah, and over there we come and are embraced with Ridwanullah, the satisfaction of Allah Azza wa Jal. Over here, when we do sabr, the Quran tells us to do sabr in this way, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. In another verse, Allah Azza wa Jal says, He explains to us what the status of the patient ones is in the day of Qiyamah. How are they received in Jannah? Angels receive them at the gates of Jannah and they say to them, Salamun alaykum bima sabartum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salamun alaykum bima sabartum. That peace be upon you for what you, for your patience, which you adopted in the world. Thus we understand that patience is a very esteemed position. It is the position of the awliya Allah. It is, and this is how the patient are welcomed. If I were just to mention, of course I will come to mention this verse once more again. I will quote this. Allah Azza wa Jal says to the Holy Prophet, Ya ayyuhan nabi, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuhan nabi, حرض المؤمنين على القتال إن يكن منكم 20 صابرون يغلبوا 200 وإن يكن منكم 100 يغلبوا 1000 من الذين كفروا بأنهم قوم لا يفقهون. O Prophet, urge the believers to battle. If there are among you 20 who are steadfast, صابرون, who are patient, they will overcome 200. And if there are amongst you 100 who are steadfast, sabirun, they will overcome 1,000 of those who are disbelieved, because there are people who do not understand. In another verse, Allah Azza wa Jal says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He calls us to be patient and steadfast and to endure. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu usbiru wa sabiru wa rabitu wattaqullaha la'allakum tuflihun. O you who have believed, O you who believe, persevere, be patient, and endure, and remain stationed and fear Allah that you may be successful. Of course, these are just some of the many verses. Patience itself, if we want to discuss a Quranic disposition of this value, we can come to many different branches related to this topic, which would require many different sittings, which our short small sitting is not enough for. So I just suffice by mentioning the status of the sabirun in the Quran, which is these first two verses, in addition to the fact that how sabr is mentioned in a positive context of the fact that we have to do something during sabr. Sabr does not mean to do not to do anything, it means to do something, and that is how it is mentioned in these two verses that I mentioned before, with regards to how Allah Azza wa Jal talks to the Prophet, and He also with regards to the hadith, of course, because of the fact that Quran, even though it is a book of guidance, it is not an encyclopedia, it is to be explained by the awliya Allah, by the 14 infallibles. It is referred to how they explain and exposit this topic, this value of as-sabr. In Nahj al-Balagha, we will also suffice with Nahj al-Balagha because the narrations concerning sabr are many. They can reach to hundreds and maybe even the thousands. We'll go to Nahj al-Balagha to Imam Ali alayhi salam himself. It is, I quote over here, وَسُئِلَ عَنِ الْإِيمَانِ, and he was asked about faith. And so he said, فَقَالَ الْإِيمَانُ عَلَى أَرْبَعِ دَعَائِمِ. Iman is built on belief, faith is built on 4 pillars. على الصبر, on patience, واليقين, conviction, والعدل, justice, والجهاد, and on jihad. والصبر منها على 4 شعب, and with regards to sabr, it is built on 4 branches. First one, على الشوق, eagerness, yearning, longing for something. We'll come to see. Eagerness for the thawab of Allah, for example. Fear, على الشفق, fear. والزهد, abstinence or asceticism. Okay? And finally, he says, وَالتَّرَقُّبْ, anticipation, waiting for something. Whoever is eager for paradise will ignore temptations. Okay. Whoever fears the fire of hell will refrain from forbidden things. Whoever acquires abstinence or asceticism from the world will easily bear the difficulties of this life, and whoever anticipates death will hasten towards good deeds. This is how Imam Ali alayhi salam mentions how sabr should be. So sabr has 4 branches. This is how a person should practically translate this trait of sabr and carry it out. So the first thing a person should have is, again, eagerness. He should have fear, abstinence from the world, and anticipation, waiting for something which is death. Again, we'll go to another narration. Imam Ali alayhi salam says, لا يعدم الصبور الظفر وإن طال به الزمن. One who adopts patience. Okay, now if there is a particular situation for which I am patient, Imam Ali says one who adopts patience in the situation will never be deprived of success, though it may take a long time for it to reach him. Even if it takes a long time, but in the end he will get the success. Okay? Or victory even. It's not success, it's victory. In another narration, Imam Ali says, مَنْ لَمْ يُنْجِهِ الصَّبْرُ أَهْلَكَهُ الْجَزَعُ. One whom patience does not give relief, dies in grief. Okay? So this huge thing should give us some relief. Patience should give us some relief in our troubled situations, in our calamities, etc. We should look to what the narration say with regards to the reward, with regards to the return, the thawab of the patient ones, how they should be patient. We should look to that, to the parables of the saints, of the awliya Allah, of the prophets, of the imams, etc. How each and every one of them was sabur. Something very much related to sabr is al-bala. Al-bala, which is calamities. In one of the narration, it is said that the people who have most bala, who are afflicted with the most bala by Allah, are the prophets. In another narration, the Holy Prophet Muhammad says, "Ma udhiya nabiyyun mithla ma udhit." No prophet has been afflicted or has been hurt. Of course, the same like bala. Has been hurt like I have been hurt. So he is the person with the most bala. Okay, he was. Of course, in another narration, Imam Ali says, I want to teach you 5 things, such that if you acquire them, if you have to mount a camel and ride it crazy, it will be worth it. Okay, what are these? These are, none of you should have hopes on anyone other than Allah. And you should not fear anything other than your sins. If someone amongst you is asked something which he does not know, then never feel ashamed to admit your ignorance. One of the narrations, it is said that Al-jahl la adri, I don't know, is half of knowledge. If you don't know an answer to something, say I don't know. Remain quiet. This is half of knowledge. Okay? If you do not know a thing, then never hesitate or feel ashamed to learn it. Acquire patience and endurance. Okay, here is Bayt al-Qatil. This is a place that I'm going to quote. Acquire patience and endurance, because their relation with true faith is that of a head to a body. Okay, so now we see that Iman is made up of a few things. One of the things that we just mentioned before, okay? One of the most important things, one of the primary things, actually in the order itself, sabr is mentioned as the first part of Iman, okay? So sabr should be at the top. So it is like the head to a body. A body is of no use without a head, Imam Ali says. Similarly, true faith can be of no use without attributes of patience and endurance. Okay. In another narration, which I end with, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, وَاسْتَتِمُّ نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ بِالصَّبْرِ عَلَى طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ وَالْمُحَافَظَةِ عَلَى مَا اسْتَحْفَظَكُم مِّن كِتَابِهِ أخذ الله بقلوبنا قلوبكم إلى الحق وألهمنا وإياكم الصبر. Imam Ali says, accomplish bounties by being patient on the matters of obedience of Allah, of which we have to be obedient to Allah, and by protecting those things which are demanded for protection by us in the Holy Quran, by you in the Holy Quran. Imam Ali tells us, And he ends with this dua for us. May Allah concentrate and make our hearts turn towards righteousness, toward the truth, al-haq. And may He grant us and you all patience and opportunities. This is the dua that Imam Ali alayhi salam has prayed for us. Inshallah, we hope that we carve ourselves in such a way that we can be a translation, a practical realization of this dua of Imam Ali alayhi salam, which is not only a dua for him to Allah, we also have to do work in order to realize this attribute in ourselves.
Okay, we'll take a short break at this point. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. So Prophet Ayub alayhi salam is often referred to as the most patient prophet. However, what can be said about the practice of patience when it comes to the other prophets and the infallibles?
Of course, now this is a misunderstanding over here. Nabi Yusuf, Nabi Ayub alayhi salam, even though amongst the other prophets he is known as one of the most patient prophets. Sabr Ayub, the patience of Ayub is known, very well known amongst our Quranic stories. But this does not mean that he was the most patient prophet. We believe that the Holy Prophet Muhammad gathered all these qualities to an extent that he was far better. He's the best of creations, period. That's number one. Number two, of course, each prophet was known with regards to a particular trait. And sometimes in Surah or in Ziyarat al-Waritha, some of the traits of some of the more famous prophets are mentioned in this ziyarah, and that Imam Hussein is an inheritor of these qualities. Now, with regards to Nabi Ayyub alayhi salam, his sabr was one of the most famous qualities of this prophet. With regards to Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam, we have, for example, al-hub or al-ashq, love of Allah and love of His son as well. Of course, his son was a wali. He was even a wali of his father. He was a prophet of a higher rank than his own father, of course. So, we have, for example, this quality with regards to Nabi Yaqub alayhi salam. Going back to Nabi Ayyub, Nabi Ayyub went through a very hard calamity, and very, 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 very strong bala, the story of which can be referred to in the books of the Quranic stories. And as a result of his sabr of 8 years, Allah Azza wa Jal gave him that which He had taken from him, of course. And as a result, his patience of this time, wherein he lost his family, lost his wealth, etc., made him this famous. And as a result, this attribute is attributed, or this value is attributed to him. But at the same time, as-sabr, as I mentioned before, is also one of the main qualities that is mentioned with regards to Karbala. In essence, truly, if we look at Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam, if we look at Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, if we look at Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and if we look at the companions, if we look at Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, truly, as-sabr right now can also be said. I clearly say and emphasize on the fact that even though Nabi Ayyub alayhi salam, his sabr was known and is still known very famously, but the sabr of Karbala of these people is no less than the sabr of Nabi Ayyub alayhi salam, even if it's, maybe it's even further or higher, of a higher level. Now, of course, I just want to mention another point with regards to the status of the awliya. Sabr is not only referred to Nabi Ayyub alayhi salam, even though he is famous for it. Sabr is also referred to as a trait of all the awliya Allah. It is also referred to as a trait of all the prophets. All the prophets, and and there is reference to this in the Quran. Another thing which is to be mentioned is the Gnostic, the Irfani reference to sabr. Even though right now we consider sabr, and there is a difference, by the way, over here, just to mention, there are two sciences. There's the spiritual Gnostic science of Irfan, Okay, this science has special terminology, it has special understandings, it has special concepts, it has special methodologies, it has a special mawdu' or has a special issue that is dealt in it. We have another science called al-akhlaq, morals, ethics. In ethics, the definition of patience is different than in irfan. In akhlaq, patience is referred to as a trait, as a value, as something we need to carve in ourselves.
Yes.
But with regards to the Arafah, it is something far higher. There are 10 stages that the Arafah describe the wayfarers or the saliks or the arifs, the spiritual wayfarers path to Allah, which he has to cross. Each stage has its own introductory steps and its own final steps. After crossing each stage, a person comes to the next stage, and he can't enter the next stage except after having made or having carved all the prerequisites of that first stage, that prior stage, and having made it as one of his abilities that he cannot be shaken with regards to. Of course, I mean, he has reached a stage where khalas, he is ta'ib. The first stage is a tawbah. This tawbah, he is now capable of tawbah. Tawbah is one of his innate traits, which will not be left. Only then can he come to the other stages. As-sabr is one of these stages, according to Irfan. So myself and any normal person, with regards to sabr, we would have to go through all these stages in order to reach that stage of sabr, that stage of sabr which truly takes a lot of effort. So in general, Irfan differentiates sabr from the understanding of sabr in akhlaq. But of course, over here right now, we're talking about sabr on a more general level. We're talking about something that we need to carve in ourselves in order to be truly followers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
So I'd like to refer to something we discussed before the break. Now, patience is often considered synonymously with simply waiting. Now, is patience really just this passive quality, or is there something more to it?
Of course, patience, unfortunately, what has been in our societies is the fact that after many distortive understandings of these different principles entering our akhlaqi system, patience has taken a more negative understanding. How do I mean? I'd just like to mention something before going into this. In logic, in the principles and the science of logic, with regards to the prerequisites for a definition to be correct, it is said that the particle of the negative should not be present in this definition. That is to say, if I say that, for example, this glass is not a book, this definition is not correct. I have to say this glass or this cup is a container which is made of plastic, etc. So I have to put it in the positive way.
Yes.
Okay. With regards to sabr, many of us until now, unfortunately, we understand the sabr that we have to wait for the 12th Imam alayhi salam to come is that we have to stay back on our couches and wait for the Imam to come. Okay, this is the sabr that we unfortunately understand. But no, in Islam and in the Quran as well, I refer back to the verses which Allah Azza wa Jal talks with to the Holy Prophet and commands with. He says, "Ya ayyuhan nabi, harrid al-mu'minina al-qital, in yakum minkum 20 sabirun." If there are 20, first of all, Allah Azza wa Jal tells the Prophet to fight, to instigate the mu'minin to fight. Okay, they're doing something positive, affirmative. Okay, and he says that if there are 20 patient ones amongst you, okay, so patience over here is mentioned in the context of doing something, of fighting. In another one, in another verse, Allah Azza wa Jal calls us, He commands us, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu usburu wa sabiru. Be patient and endure. Okay? There is these to endure. Musabara is different from sabr. Al-musabara has more of a continuous meaning to it. So Allah is emphasizing a sabr that we have to be patient and we have to be continuously patient. But over here again, He thereafter says, وَرَابِطُ, remain patient. Al-murabata, one of the meanings of murabata is for a person to station himself in jihad.
Yes.
Okay, in order to go to the fronts of the Muslims, Thughur al-Muslimin, in order to guard them. Okay, so Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when he was practically teaching us, of course, I will mention, like I mentioned before, my way of explaining each of these values is fishing the words related to each of these values from the words of and the speech of Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
Yes.
I will mention later on how Imam Hussein mentions this word of sabr to his companions.
Yes, okay.
But Imam Hussein, again, just to relate this, the Imam taught us that sabr is something positive. It's not to do something, it's not
Yes.
to not do something. No, it's to do something. So he was patient and he did something, and as a result, he truly brought the soul back to this important value, which was emptied from its true soul, and a false soul was put into it. And as a result, this became a kind of hypocrisy with regards to sabr
Yes.
that unfortunately many of us are doing until now. Another thing, another of the qualities that were also mentioned in this, unfortunately, this context is infallibility. Infallibility, of course, this entered a little bit in some of the other sciences. Infallibility, some people may come to say that infallibility is for a ma'soom, is for an infallible, to not commit mistakes. Is for a ma'soom to stay away from the haram, etc., etc. Okay, again, like we mentioned before in the principles of logic, this is not considered as a correct correct definition. So a ma'soom is a person who takes his responsibility during the time of responsibility. This ma'soom is translated or is practiced is realized by the character of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. This ma'soom is realized by the character of this infallible who did sabr by doing something, and this is how we saw sabr.
We'll take a short break at this point. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the show. So, after having understood the concept of patience, in what circumstances, or rather at what stage of life, is it best for us to develop patience within ourselves?
Of course, the age of a human being is divided into three. We have the first period, which is the childhood, before the taklif, or before the taklif al-shar'i, before the bulugh. Of course, over here, just to mention over here, taklif al-shar'i differs from bulugh. When in our terminology in madrasa, we teach students that when you become baligh, we use it in the same context as taklif. But taklif, which means responsibility, accountability, legislative Islamic accountability is different from bulugh. Bulugh is puberty or adolescence, reaching and having those conditions of taklif, of responsibility in a person's body. Okay, so taklif is different from that. So when a person, before the stage of taklif, we have a certain age, the age of childhood. Of course, this as well is as well divided according to the akhlaqi riwayat of the Holy Prophet of how we have to deal with this person, with a person during these three stages of his age. Put this aside. We have the second stage, which is the stage of taklif, which is the stage of responsibility and accountability. This is the time of work, the time of deeds. It starts from the time of bulugh. It starts from the time when a person reaches 14 years and 7 months. Sometimes some may be before this, but if we go to the years, 14 years and 7 solar months, 15 lunar years, with regards to a boy, and 9 years, 9 lunar years, or 8 years and 9 months with regards to a girl. When person reaches this age, they start another stage of their life, the stage of the deeds. After that, of course, it is not exactly, it is not clearly lined out. Some people may grow older, may grow old, may grow weak, feeble, أرذل العمر, the weak and the feeble age, which is mentioned in the Quran. before others and some after others. But then we have the final parts of our life when a person becomes weak. So the age of a human being is divided into three. The place and the time of sabr is the middle age, when a person is an adolescent, when a person is an adult, when a person is responsible, when a person is a child, namaz, salat is not wajib on him. When he becomes of an old age, when he becomes a sheikh, as it is called in Arabic, of an old age, when a person becomes old, sometimes Psalm fasting is not obligatory with regards to them. But a person in the middle, generally, they are responsible. So this is the time of work. This is the time of action. This is the time of sabr. Like the youth of Karbala. Like the youth who fought with Imam Hussein, some even before the age of taklif, the age of bulugh. Some even before the age of taklif. Like Aun and Muhammad, the sons of Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam. So, if a person does not work in this age in general, then they will remain lazy, weak, and cowardly for the rest of their life, and they won't be able, they won't have any fruits of this life in the hereafter. So the time of patience is especially this time. Okay? And of course, our Imams alayhi salam, most of them, some of them passed away in the 60s, but they continued their prime even throughout the 6th decade of their life. And so as a result, we can see that if a person is strong, takes care of himself, they will have more time to work. The Holy Prophet Muhammad told Abu Dhar, Ya Abu Dhar, O Abu Dhar, اغتنم خمسا قبل خمس. Consider 5 things, or take bounty, make use of 5 things before 5. شبابك قبل هرمك. This is the main point of to quote. Your adolescence, your youth before your old age. وصحتك قبل سقمك. Health before sickness. And وغناك قبل فقرك. Wealth before poverty. وفراغك قبل شغلك. Free time before being busy. وحياتك قبل موتك. Starts with the time of youth. Of course, this is all related to patience as well.
So, what is there to understand when it comes to the practical application of patience in different situations and circumstances?
Of course, with regards to the applications of patience in the different circumstances, let us refer to some of the narrations. Imam Ali alayhi salam, says in Nahj al-Balagha, I continue to quote, of course in the end we will come to deduce that the sabr is one quality, but it is defined, or it is classified in the different categories with regards to by what we do sabr for. As-sabru sabran. Sabr are 2 kinds. Sabrun ala ma takrah. Sabrun with regards to that which you hate or dislike, which you don't like. وَصَبْرٌ عَلَى مَا تُحِبْ. And patience over what you desire. Of course, patience with regards to things that a person dislikes. Sometimes not everyone is fond of waking up. Of course, over here, our climate in Tanzania, alhamdulillah, is moderate. But if we go to the colder countries, for example, Europe, for example, to some of the countries of the Middle East, Syria and Lebanon, at times, at winter times, it's very cold. So a person to wake up for Salat al-Fajr when it has just snowed and the water is very cold, is so cold, that if we do wudu, our skin turns red out of how it is cold. But everyone would like this. So we have to be patient with regards to it, according to what Imam Ali alayhi salam teaches us. وَصَبْرٌ عَلَى مَا تُحِبْ. We have some particular desires that we want to do something. Some youth will say, I want to listen to music. Okay, it is haram according to Islam. It is haram. We have to do sabr with regards to this. This is again one of the other qualities that Imam Hussein taught us. You truly want to be a follower of Imam Hussein? Why do you truly go to the mosque? Why do you go to the mosque during Ashura? And you go on thereafter continuing to listen to music? Don't you not learn from Imam Hussein these qualities that he has taught you, for which he has sacrificed his blood, his children, his family, his womenfolk, etc.? Why do we take the lesson and the uprising of Imam Hussein, his martyrdom, so lightly with regards to these qualities? Why do we do that? In another narration, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, الصبر على المصيبة والصبر على الطاعة and الصبر على المعصية. Over here he says that patience are of three kinds. He says patience on hardships with regards to hardships, patience in obedience, and patience in disobedience. Let's just talk about each of these just a little bit. Imam Ali says that a human being has to be patient in the time of hardships. The time of hardships in general, al-bala is revealed or is descended by Allah. It comes to us. We are afflicted with bala because of the fact that the essence of our soul is of such a matter, is of such a nature that bala clarifies it. It makes it it takes it to higher levels. Just like gold needs a very high degree of heat for it to be boiled. The same is with regards to us. And we should never think that the masa'ib that come to us are great, because the masa'ib and the bala that came to the infallibles, that came to the awliya, that came to the imams and the prophets were far higher, or far more. Okay? So everyone should just look at his bala and see that it's not that much. On the same note, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, ينزل الصبر على قدر المصيبة. Patience is granted to a person in proportion to the extent of the calamity, of how strong the calamity is. ومن ضرب يده على فخذه عند مصيبة حبط عمله. One who expresses irritation by beating his thighs with his hand, at times of calamity, his efforts, his amal, his deeds are wiped out, they are nullified. Therefore, at times of difficulties, rather than demonstrating irritation, you should be firm, demonstrating sabr, endurance, and with a raised head, continue on the path, and do these dhikr, adhkar of Allah, which actually help us in order to be patient. Another form of patience, like I mentioned before, is patience in situations of obedience. Of course, an obedient person can only tell others how tough obedience is or patience is during this time. It is tough, but at the same time, with it, a person can fulfill the verse that says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ati'u Allah, obey Allah in all the ahkam that He has given us, wajibat, muharram, etc. Wa ati'u ar-Rasula wa ulil amri minkum. Obey Allah, His Messenger, and the guardians of your affairs. So in general, over here, if we come to look at what the Holy Prophet Muhammad teaches us, in one of his narrations, he says that Surah Hud has made my hairs grey or white. How so? The Holy Prophet, according to some explanations, when he comes across the verse, فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ, demonstrate endurance and stay on the correct path, the way you have been commanded. The Holy Prophet, who has fulfilled all of his wajibat, who is the best of creations, before this world, during that world, etc. For him, are we all created? He has been told to do this. And out of this verse in Surah Hud, after having had all those other verses and surah revealed to him, he comes to this, فَاسْتَقِمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ. It's like Allah Azza wa Jalla is telling him, be straight on this path like you have been commanded. And so when he sees this, how great the speech is to him, how great of a nature, of how strong it is, then Holy Prophet said that Surah Hud has made my hairs grow grey. So what about us, who are filled with sins, who are filled with mistakes and evils, etc.? How should we be? We have to be patient then during the time of obedience. We'll continue on. There is another form of patience, which is the patience in disobedience. Of course, our time is running out. I'll just suffice with mentioning a narration. From Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, a person came to him and he told him, I am a disobedient person. I have no control and patience, hence I disobey. Please give me some good tidings or some maw'idha, give me some, preach to me. Okay? Imam Hussein alayhi salam said, do 5 things. After which, commit whatever sin you want to. The first one, do not eat the sustenance given by Allah. Find someone else to give you sustenance, give you rizq. Then do any sin you desire. Get out of the kingdom and authority of Allah. Then do any sin you desire. Make someone else create you. Be in the realm or in the world in which you are not bound by the laws of nature, or the laws of spirituality, all these different laws of existence of the cosmos that Allah has created. Then do whatever you want. Okay? Find some place where Allah Azza wa Jal cannot see you. Allah sees everything. When the angel of death comes to seize your soul, keep him away from yourself. Defend yourself. Put him away. Prevent him from taking your soul. If you can do that, then sin. And finally, when Allah wants to throw you in the fire of hell, then do not enter the fire of hell. Say that I'm not going to enter. If you can do all of this, then sin. But if you can't, then you have to stop. According to many narrations, when this person heard this, he said, now truly you have filled me with that which will help me to stay away from disobedience. Of course, these were the level of conviction or the level of convincing that our Imams ﷺ had. Of course, thereat we come to see that sabr is divided according to what we face. We have a sabr with regards to what we like and what we dislike. We have with regards to disobedience, obedience, and we have with regards to calamity. Of course, if we continue on looking with the different narrations, we can come to see that there are many different things that we have to do sabr with regards to.
Okay, so before we conclude for today, what can the Ummah learn about patience from the tragedy of Karbala?
With regards to patience from the tragedy of Karbala, we can come to see that Imam Hussein salam, even though in the situation or in his uprising, which way it did, even though he was faced by all these odds, but regardless, he continued to fight on, him and his companions for this cause of reviving Islam and bringing back and reforming the Ummah, the nation of his holy prophet, of his grandfather. Imam Hussein personified patience, and he continued on, and as a result he was a practical translation or an example of the verse in which Allah Azza wa Jal as well says, Wallahu ma'as sabirin, or inna Allah ma'as sabirin, etc. Wallahu ma'as sabirin, that surely Allah is, and Allah is with the patient ones. Imam Hussein, during his situation, however hard it was, Allah Azza wa Jal was with him, and he was looking at what he was faced with, and as a result he made great the memory of Imam Hussein, and as a result the level of Imam Hussein before Allah, the rank of the Imam was made very high, in addition to the fact that his message was realized and was reached. The foundations of Bani Umayyah were shaken, and as a result Imam Hussein in general did what he came out to do. And even the Imam did teach us something, that our lives should not be divided to that life which we have in the mosque, we have in the house, we have in the society, politics, etc. Okay, we are the followers of Ahlul Bayt. We will only practice our faith in the mosque. Okay, that's it. With regards to politics, we don't want to enter. With regards to practically taking enough participation in the society, we won't. With regards to other things, etc., we will just deal with our affairs according to our own traditions, etc., at home, whatever. Is this what the Imam taught us?
No.
He taught us that the sabr should be applied in all the domains of our lives, in all the different fields of our lives. Whether it's at mosque, whether it's with regards to our families, whether it's with regard to the society, whether it's with regards to our political life, etc. Imam Hussein salam's uprising also did have a political angle, and so he does teach us that we have to be patient, even in the political field. Of course, to learn patience, one has to go in the field of action. Action with regards to all of these different fields that I've mentioned, and also with regards to jihad. If a person wants to learn patience, then we have to do jihad. There are many forms of jihad. We have Jihad al-Asghar and Jihad al-Akbar. Jihad al-Asghar itself is not only constricted to fighting, it is not only to going on the battlefield. Not all of our situations, not all of us have this privilege. But at the same time, this does not mean that we don't help those who are fighting for Islam. For example, what is happening right now with regards to the Prophet when we're recording these episodes, that this film that is insulting to the Holy Prophet has been released. We, those who are smart with using computers, who are intelligent, who are capable of this profession, who have gone into this field, learning computers, etc., they have to do something. They have to spread out this message. Okay. Others have to do other things according to what they know, etc., according to their professions. This is Jihad al-Akbar, Jihad al-Asghar. We also have Jihad al-Akbar, which we also have to do. So, this was the same patience that was taught to us by Imam Hussein and also by all the relatives of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. When Al-Qasim ibn al-Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam, when he came to Imam Hussein and asked him, is my name among the shuhada, among the martyrs? Look at what he's asking. He's a 14-year-old boy, but look at what he's looking towards, what he wants. He says, is my name among the names of the martyrs? The Imam asks him, and how do you see death? So Al-Qasim answers, أحلى من العسل. I see it sweeter than honey. And after that, Imam Hussein alayhi salam taught, Al-Qasim, he shows us that's how patience should be. In this situation, when they are thirsty, when they are embargoed, circled, etc., besieged, Al-Qasim alayhi salam also shows us how sabr should be. And so he went out and fought. And this moon and this figure of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, this huge personality, Al-Qasim as well alayhi salam, was martyred. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for now, but join us for our next episode right here on IBN TV. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for the next program.